20 of the biggest underdogs in sports movies. Poor sports movies are common and also often entertaining. Of course, not all men are cut from the same cloth. Some dogs are more underhanded than others. This is not a list of the best bad sports movies, although some are in the mix. No, this is a list of movies featuring the biggest underdogs. American team against Iceland. Daniel LaRusso. You don't need to apply. These weaklings are even more important. 1 of 20. Dodgeball, a true underdog story. 2004. The word firecracker is literally in the title of this movie, so we figured it deserved the chance to be included. Sure, you might not think of dodgeball as a sport, but it's presented that way in this comedy. Plus, the underdog team is called Average Joes and they seem to have no clue how to play dodgeball at first. 2 of 20. Miracle. 2004. Perhaps the biggest upset in real sports, at least if you're American. Miracle on Ice is a well-known story. The USA hockey team at the 1980 Lake Placid Olympics were amateurs. The Red Army of the Soviet Union was practically a group of specialists. Everyone assumed the Soviet Union would win, but Team USA pulled off the upset, an upset so big it got the biographical treatment. 3 out of 20. Space Jam. 1996. Rarely has a team featuring Michael Jordan been weak, but that was the case with Space Jam. The Looney Tunes were up against the Monstars, who had stolen the talents of some of the best basketball players in the world as well as Muggsy Bogues and Sean Bradley. The poor state of the Toon squad is proven by the fact that they completely finish at the half. Jordan's skills and the Looney Tunes really break almost every basketball rule, make for a win, but just barely. 4 out of 20. Rocky. 1976. Rocky Balboa, at least in the original film, is perhaps the pinnacle of sports movies. He's seen as an easy win for hero Apollo Creed, a composer fight, a resume booster. Instead, the Italian stallion trains hard and gives Creed the fight of his life. Famously, Rocky doesn't win, but he goes all the way in a sports movie that even won Best Picture at the Oscars. 5 out of 20. The Bud of Air. 1997. Look, if you're relying on a dog to save your basketball team, you probably lack talent. If you've never seen Air Bud, you might think it's all about a dog that plays basketball, but in reality, Air Bud is more of a mascot for the Timberwolves. However, in the state finals, the team is down 4 players due to injuries and they are soundly defeated. Fortunately, as you may have heard, there is no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. 6 out of 20. Breaking Up. 1979. In addition to being a coming-of-age classic, Breaking is a poor sports movie. Dave and his friends live in Bloomington, home to Indiana University. The university has a little 500 bike race and decides to open the race to a team from the city. Dave and his friends are that team, but Dave is the only good rider in the lineup, so he has to ride almost the entire race by himself, while the other teams switch riders. Then, the demon is injured and the weaker element becomes even stronger. 7 out of 20. The Mighty Ducks. 1992. In the 1994 sequel D2, The Mighty Ducks, Team USA is no weakling, even though it loses to Iceland the first time. However, District 5, aka the Ducks, are definitely underdogs in the first movie. Even before Adam Banks arrives to add talent to the roster, Gordon Bombay can get them the right equipment and turn them into a real team. 8 out of 20. Cool Run. 1993. Another real-life story, and in that Olympics, Cool Run tells the story of bobsleigh's Jamaican team. Obviously, Jamaica is not a country you would associate with winter sports. A comedic take on the events, Cool Runs culminates with bobsleig's Jamaican team qualifying for the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. Then, they did really poorly. Hey, there's a reason this team is on this list of the biggest underdogs in sports. 9 out of 20. Alternatives 2000. Sure, the Washington Sentinels are scumbags, but this group of aggressive surrogates are also underdogs. One of them is a sumo wrestler who has never played football. Now, injured or not, the guards get both the weaker status and our rooting interest because the entire Dallas team, not the Cowboys, runs through the offensive line, even worse from a labor perspective. Fortunately, the Sentinels got a big win. 10 out of 20. Happy Gilmore 1996. Speaking of athletes starting a new sport, Adam Sandler's Happy Gilmore is a failed hockey player who ends up playing golf thanks to his natural ability to drive the ball more than anyone else on the PGA Tour. Of course, golf is about more than just driving, and it's definitely not about fighting Bob Barker. Thus, even with one great skill, Happy is largely an underdog, even if he takes down Shooter McGavin in the end. 11 of 20. The Longest Yard 1974. It's pretty self-evident, if you are a team of convicts playing a team of prison guards in a prison yard, you are underdogs. That's true even with a former NFL quarterback on your team in Paul Wrecking Crew. Crew and his fellow convicts are able to come together against the odds, though. Notably, The Longest Yard was later remade with the aforementioned Sandler in the Crew role. 12 of 20. Victory 1987. You think beating prison guards in a football game is tough? Imagine facing off against a proper German soccer team when you are a group of POWs during World War II. That's what faces the Allied soccer team in Victory, sometimes titled Escape to Victory. The movie has a fascinating cast, including Michael Caine, Sylvester Stallone, and Brazilian soccer legend Pelé. 13 of 20. Major League 1989. If you are a professional MLB team, how can you be that big of an underdog? Well, maybe your new owner is tanking the team, hoping to move them. That's what happens to Cleveland's MLB squad in Major League. Of course, these scrappy underdogs are able to come together and climb up the standings. Major League is still considered a top sports comedy of all time, and spawned a couple of sequels as well. 14 of 20. Hoosiers 1986. Hickory High is a small school in a small Indiana town, so even having Norman Dale as head coach can only take them so far. The Huskers have to deal with having only 5 players for a time as well. Sure, when Jimmy Chitwood returns to the team, locally they are less of an underdog, but then they make it to the state championship game in Indianapolis. The South Bend Central Bears are a larger, more athletic team, but Hickory High is not about to give up, even if it is a bigger underdog than ever. 15 of 20. The Bad News Bears 1976. Problematic, crass, and about youth baseball, The Bad News Bears is a strange film, to be sure. It was also a hit at the time, even getting remade. The titular team is one of the handful of sports movie underdogs on this list not to win in the end, and they would remain underdogs in future sequels. 16 of 20. Necessary Roughness 1991. Infamously, the SMU Mustangs football team was handed the death penalty by the NCAA, ruining a once venerable program for a generation. Necessary Roughness is influenced by that. The Texas State fight in Armadillo saw the entire coaching staff fired and all but one of the players expelled for corruption and malfeasance. That leaves new coach Ed Gennaro to put together an entirely new roster without any scholarships available. Naturally, the new roster is a little bit wackier than the usual college football roster, but that's what makes an underdog sports squad. 17 of 20. Teen Wolf 1985. At first, the Beavers are major underdogs against the Dragons, a rival high school basketball team. Also, they lose badly. Then, Scott Howard becomes a werewolf, a teen wolf as it were. Suddenly, Scott is great at basketball, and the Beavers are no longer underdogs. However, Scott then renounces playing as his werewolf self, not ideal for the Beavers as they head into the championship game against the Dragons. This time, though, the underdogs pull it off. 18 of 20. Horse Feathers 1932. Yes, the Marx Brothers made an underdog sports comedy. Huxley College is consistently losing, and a big game against rival Darwin College is coming up. The new president of the school, played by Groucho, is convinced that his team should pay professional football players to join the team. Unfortunately, through a series of misunderstandings, Huxley recruits Chico and Harpo, who are not football players. Even so, Huxley is able to pull off the win, even if they resort to using a horse-drawn wagon to score a touchdown. 19 of 20. Mystery, Alaska 1999. In the small town of Mystery, there is a big hockey game every Saturday that is a massive event for the community. This leads to a news story, which in turn leads to the NHL's New York Rangers coming up to Alaska to play an exhibition game. The expectation is that the Rangers will trounce the locals, but in the end, the Rangers barely eke out a 5-4 win. Mystery, Alaska is probably somewhat inspired by when a team from Dawson City traveled to Ottawa to face the Silver Seven for the Stanley Cup in 1905. In reality, though, Ottawa won the first game 9-2, and the second game 23-2. 20 out of 20. Next goal wins 2023. American Samoa has a national soccer team. It is, arguably, the worst national team in men's soccer. However, Thomas Rongen took the gig coaching the team to try and get them to qualify for the 2014 World Cup. It didn't work out, but it inspired a documentary, which has now become a narrative film directed by Taika Waititi.
Till I'm on top, yeah.